Today, I want to share my experiences of walking 10,000 steps a day for a full year. So no fancy graphics or flashy edits, just my honest thoughts, especially from the perspective of a physiotherapist with hip arthritis. So if you're curious about the potential benefits, challenges and the lessons I've learned along the journey, or if you have hip or knee arthritis and are thinking about trying something similar, then this video is for you. If you're new to the channel, then hi, I'm Stephen Bunting. I'm a specialist MSK physiotherapist based in the UK. On this channel, I discuss the common musculoskeletal problems experienced by everyday people and share evidence-based insights to keep you informed and healthy. I was diagnosed with hip arthritis about 5 years ago, but I'd had symptoms for a good 10 to 15 years before that. Being a physio, I had a pretty good idea of what was going on before the x-ray confirmed it. One of my main hobbies is hiking, and I first noticed hip pain as a dull ache in the groin area after long hikes, usually aching on the drive home, which then persisted for a few days after. Over time, it started bothering me more frequently. A deep nagging ache while sitting for a while, or a sharper pain when twisting my hip or squatting deeply. Simple things got harder too, putting on shoes and socks, getting on a bike, and high stepping over stiles and walls when out hiking felt like I was doing the splits. Now I knew the value of exercising with arthritis, so I kept active, but my walking habits were all over the place. I'd push myself on a 30 or 40,000 step hike, then do very little for weeks. It was an inconsistent all or nothing approach, which as a physio I knew wasn't ideal. Then about 5 years ago, a friend suggested doing the 10,000 steps a day in March challenge, which has become a bit of a thing here in the UK since COVID. And by the end of that March, my hip felt so much better. The daily ache was less intense, my recovery after long hikes improved, and I felt generally looser and more mobile. So over the next few years, I started experimenting. I tried different daily step targets and even took breaks to see how quickly my symptoms would return. All of this eventually led me to commit to a full year of averaging 10,000 steps a day to really test the benefits. So for the full year, I didn't stick to a rigid 10,000 steps every single day. Instead, I averaged it out over each month. This was something I'd learned from the previous years, that flexibility works well for me and makes the habit more sustainable. So, on most days, I'd hit around 10,000 steps, but I also had days when I'd do up to 15,000 steps, which then allowed the occasional 5,000 step day when life got busy. If I did a 30,000 step hike at the weekend, I then didn't feel guilty about taking a recovery day. It's a bit like managing a budget. Some days you spend more, some days you save, but as long as the monthly average hits the target, then you're on track. So this approach fit much better into my lifestyle, as it allowed me to enjoy the longer walks without overloading my hip. But at the end of every month, the average was always somewhere between 10 and 11,000 daily steps. Of course, it wasn't all sunshine and country lanes. There were days when I'd come home from a long day at work, tired, and the weather outside was dreadful, but even on those days, I'd drag myself out in my waterproofs, but I always felt better afterwards. Winter was particularly tough. Short, dark days and cold, wet weather made motivation a real challenge. But to stay motivated, I'd listen to podcasts, audio books, or I planned some of the content for this channel. This made the time fly by and essentially turned the walks into a productive part of my day. So let's answer the big question. Did I feel better and did it help my hip? Yes, absolutely. My hip arthritis has improved significantly. Before this challenge, long hikes would leave me in pain for days. Now, my hip is more resilient and I recover much faster. The range of movement of my hip hasn't improved much. It's still fairly stiff, but it has reduced my daily pain. I rarely reach for painkillers anymore, which is a huge win. In fact, I rarely think about my hip at all now. It's become relegated to the back of my mind, which for anyone living with a chronic condition is a huge mental relief. And aside from the hip, I also feel fitter overall. Climbing stairs, gardening, and even playing golf have all become easier. As someone who spends their working days talking to many different people and trying to solve their problems, I cherish the quiet time I get when walking. It's my chance to reset, reflect, and let my mind wander. In fact, many of the videos on my channel were inspired by thoughts I had during these walks. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by work or life, then this experience has certainly taught me that a daily walk can provide that much needed mental break. It's like meditation in motion, a chance to clear your mind and gain perspective. One unexpected benefit of this challenge was just getting to know my local area better. I've explored so many paths, trails and historic sites that I never knew existed. For example, I recently walked the full length of the Lancaster Canal, which is a 200-year-old, 60-mile-long waterway near my home. It was fascinating to see the old bridges and aqueducts that are still in use to this day. Discovering those forgotten corners has kept things interesting and added a sense of adventure to my daily steps. I've also met so many people whilst out doing these walks. There are the familiar faces that I see of people doing their walks. I know the names of so many different dogs now. And then there are those people who you pass and just stop for a chat, and you then end up seeing them again a few weeks later, and before you know it, you're on first name terms and they're in your socials. And amongst my family and friends, I've now become the authority on the local area. I often now get asked for ideas about where to walk or what to see when the weather's nice and people are looking to get out and go somewhere new. And it's nice to be able to help in that way. Studies consistently show that regular walking reduces joint pain, lowers anxiety and depression, reduces dementia risk, and even cuts the risk of cardiovascular disease and certain cancers. A 2022 study involving over 78,000 people summarised these benefits and concluded that for every additional 2,000 steps up to 10,000 significantly reduced the risk of premature death. But the researchers also found that you don't have to hit 10,000 steps every day to reap these benefits. For people under 60, the sweet spot appears to be around 8 to 10,000 steps, while those over 60 can see similar benefits between 6 and 8,000 steps. For me, I found that 8,000 steps is actually a more sustainable target. It takes me about an hour at my pace compared to the hour and 20 minutes for 10,000, and that extra 20 minutes really helps me to fit it into my daily routine. So my routine now is that on work days, I typically get about 2,000 to 3,000 steps in during the day, just from moving around the clinic and walking to and from my car. So to reach my goal, I'd add an extra 30 to 45 minute walk after work, either right when I got home or after dinner. If the weather was variable, then I'd try to do the longer walks on the nicer days, so I didn't have to do so much on the poorer days. At weekends, I'd often go hiking or play golf, or both, so those days were much easier to reach and often exceeded my 8,000 step target. So my advice is to find a daily step count that works for you. 10,000 steps might be the headline figure, but it's certainly not set in stone. Your step count should be challenging but achievable, not something that leaves you exhausted or in pain. And if you're struggling to fit walking into your day, then try breaking it into smaller chunks. A 20-minute walk in the morning, another at lunch, and a third in the evening can quickly add up. And if you prefer walking with company, then consider joining a walking group or teaming up with a friend. To track your steps, a simple smartphone app will do. But if you're serious about accuracy, then consider a dedicated fitness tracker or a smartwatch. And if the weather is a barrier, then don't rule out a treadmill. It's not as scenic, but it still delivers all the physical benefits and you can zone out with a podcast or an audio book while you walk. So that's my take on a year of walking 10,000 steps a day. It's been one of the best decisions I've made for my health, both physically and mentally. So if you're dealing with arthritis or are just looking to improve your fitness, then why not give it a try? Even 2,000 or 3,000 steps a day can make a real difference, or it can give you a starting point from which to slowly increase. Okay, well, thanks for watching. I'd love to hear about your walking experiences in the comments. What's your daily step target? What benefits have you noticed? Let's share our stories and keep each other motivated. And if you're interested in learning more about hip arthritis and what I do, apart from walking, that really helps me, then check out this video here. Okay, well, take care and bye for now.